So now is the Q&A part of our question of our program. And if you have a question for Ken, please type it in. And I actually noted down a couple questions while I was sort of helping monitor the chat. And the first question was, someone had their backyard, they have no plants in it, and they had a bunch of mulch put down. I'm not sure if it was a year ago or 2 years ago, but it will, she was wondering what to do now, because she thought that having it just mulched wasn't good. So any ideas?
Well, I mean, if it's mulched, it's mulched, and I wouldn't, yeah, what kind of mulch makes a big difference. If it's chopped up tires, then you need to get a toxic waste disposal crew in to remove that stuff. But if it's a wood chip mulch, which I'm going to assume is what it is, then go plant in it, but don't bring in any more. But yeah, just go plant in it. It's probably not down real thick, so you can actually get down into the soil, and just eventually it'll decompose and go away. It's not gonna hurt. None of our plants grew up in a bed of mulch and evolved in a bed of mulch, and it's not. It's you have it and just live with it. Just plant and enjoy your garden.
Okay, and another question that I wrote down was, somebody said, what should we do about horseweed? I don't know if you know, but
I don't. Yeah, I don't know that common name.
Yeah.
Sorry. Is it an annual? Is it a perennial? I mean, if it's an annual, you can probably just pull it. I don't know what plant that is.
Yeah, it's a tall, awful plant, and I don't know if it's oh, here, somebody says horsetail equisetum.
Oh, equisetum is tough. Yeah, equisetum's tough. The green wood chip method will work on equisetum. Herbicides work on equisetum. You can dig it out. It's hard. Equisetum, if you have equisetum, that means you've got a really wet place. And so, you need some other plants. Shade will work on that. If you can plant maybe some red twig dogwood or a button bush or something that likes that wet spot and will grow up and shade it out, that might work. But equisetum, yeah, that one's, yeah, horsetail. It's a tough one, but you can use other plants whenever you can, and I would try shade on that.
Okay, and then the last one is, why does mulch from green wood work but not from dead trees?
Because it gets hot. And what happened, there's a method of killing things called death by 1,000 cuts, where you just go out every day and cut it off. Go out the next day. If something sprouted back, cut it off. If something sprouted back, cut it off. Well, this is like putting a little oven right on top of the ground, and it kills everything down. And then everything, it's got so much energy storage underneath. Field bindweed might have a 30-foot root system. And so it sprouts back, but it sprouts back up into this oven, into this hot place. So it gets burned right back. And it's a continual process of trying to grow up and getting burned back down. And every time it invests some energy from underground into putting on new growth that then gets burned off, then some of that underground growth dies. And that's why, if you watch my YouTube channel on this, I'll talk about that. For bindweed, I had to, and for a few things, I had to still go out. It's not like I put it down and then just ignored it. I still go every week and look and see if anything's come up, but whatever's come up is not very vigorous. It's just barely made it above the ground and just chop it up real quick with my hoe. I never spend more than 5 minutes in this area, but I go once or twice a week and chop everything off that is trying to come up through it. And after a while, it just gives up. But it's by burning it back repeatedly, and dead wood is not going to do that.
Right. Yeah, bindweed is particularly pernicious. I know my experience with it is similar to yours. If you cut it, you have to cut it at ground level so it can't photosynthesize. But if you try to dig it up, it just encourages more. Every little tiny root fragment will just grow a new plant.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like I said, it can have a 30-foot root system. You're not going to dig it out. But if I take my hoe where it's coming up, say there's 1.5 feet of wood chips, and I take my hoe and chop it off 6 inches below the top of the wood chips, then it's going to have to put on that much growth before it starts getting any photosynthesis and starts replenishing itself. And if I then cut it right back off, you just wear it out. But
Yeah.
you have to be persistent.
Yeah, I go for bindweed runs.
Yeah, it's the worst.
Um, okay, so more green chip. Will the green chip method hurt shrubs in the area?
In my experience so far, no. Yeah, you don't, it's conventional wisdom. You don't want to pile up wood chips against the side of a tree or something. But there's a little over in that spot that I did next door. There's a little tiny volunteer oak tree. And as long as, if I'd cut that oak tree off at the ground or bent it over even and covered it with wood chips, I probably would have killed it. But because the photosynthesizing part of it is above the wood chips, it's still growing, and it hasn't hurt it at all that I can tell. The person who I got this method from, her name is it's right here. But yeah, Linda Chalker Scott. She's a researcher from the University of Washington. I don't necessarily agree with everything she has to say, but this is a really, I think, smart idea that works. And you might want to, for more technical information on how this works, that would be the scientist who is promoting it, who has more technical information.
Okay, several people would like to know, where can you get a Dutch hoe?
I get them from an outfit called Earth Tools. They're in Kentucky. They have a website, but you have to actually call them on the phone to order a tool. The thing is that they're made in Holland, and they have a 6-foot European ash handle, which seems a little silly that we can't use them with American ash, but because the box is so long, the shipping is kind of expensive, so it's worth buying 4 of them. Shipping on 4 is the same as shipping on 1. So buy them. We give them for wedding presents. We have a friend who does calligraphy, and she'll put people's names on the handles, and we give them for wedding presents, and we sell them to people too. I sell them to some of my clients. Yeah.
A few people could go in together and order.
Yeah. My wife's over here saying buy them with a friend, which is right.
All right. I have a pretty involved question.
Oh boy.
I'm going to just read it to you. We bought an acre, but discovered high water tables. So my lawn is poor quality clay soils donated to my space. So we could build 10 to 15 feet taller. So I guess they laid on the clay soil. I'm using intact leaves in my garden beds for over a decade, shrub borders around trees, but not touching ever, to provide a barrier. Oh, this is a comment, not a question. I apologize. To provide a barrier for the lawnmower, and my only other additive is untreated lawn clippings that are too thick for leaving in that spot. I bag both, and in a large yard, it seems to keep the moisture levels pretty constant, but not wet, and hopefully improve my yard's dubious dump soils in southern Illinois. So that is a testimonial.
Yeah, dump, when you put a clay soil on top of a wet soil, and the clay gets wet, you get what's called a perched water table. And it's because of there's a difference in the permeability of the soil. The water just sits there in that open area, and it's really a problem. But plants are the answer as far as I'm concerned. Find plants, plant things like red twig dogwood, buttonbush, sedges, that can suck a lot of moisture out of the ground. And that'll help as much as anything.
They sell them at Chalet. Somebody just texted.
They're in southern Illinois, so there's places down there, I would think. All right, I had a trumpet vine that grew everywhere, and I cut down the main plant, but it keeps coming back everywhere. Should I just keep cutting it back when I see it?
Yeah, good luck
For the rest of your life.
for the rest of your life. Trumpet plant is a really tough one. And that's one I haven't really figured out yet, because they're wonderful. There's no better hummingbird attractor than a trumpet plant. I know that their natural environment is in a woodland setting, and so maybe shade is a way to go with those, as far as creating an environment where they're not too aggressive. But trumpet vine is, you can cut off, you can treat the stumps with a herbicide that's for that. I'm not going to advise on what kind of herbicide to use, but that's something you can investigate. Maybe talk to your county extension agent. But yeah, trumpet vine's a really tough one. You're sure not going to dig them out of the ground. They're there forever. Be careful everybody be careful where you plant trumpet vine. I would love to have one. I've seen some great ones, but I'm not that brave.
Yeah, I've seen them used effectively at the Garfield Park Conservatory and maybe Morton Arboretum, maybe not. But those are very large places, and they can handle that. Whereas yards, it's very difficult.
Right, and they've got staff.
Right.
Yeah, because they come up from seed. The seed gets transplanted, gets moved around. They come up here and there. That's a tough one. We're getting all tough questions.
Yeah,
a lot of them. That's fair,
All right. So, okay, one more tough question, and then a couple other things. Red buds don't seem to die with cutting a couple inches down, at least for me. So she must be somewhere where the red buds are more aggressive.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm
down south, maybe.
Yeah. They should. I mean, if you, a lot of trees, I've killed a lot of trees just by cutting it off a couple inches high and then putting a soup can or a coffee can or something over the stump to where it doesn't get any sunlight to the stump. If I'm surprised to hear that as long as sunlight, a red bud they're not that persistent.
Yeah, she says Northwest Ohio and the red bud, similar to.
Yeah.
But I guess it just depends on where it's growing. Okay. I have a 7-acre parcel. Here's another good one that I wish to plant wildflowers for bees and monarch butterflies. YouTube says I should rototill the soil, then plant the seeds. Do you agree for such a large parcel, or will I be in trouble with weeds?
Yeah, YouTube isn't telling you that. Somebody on YouTube is telling you that. And, I used to think, I grew up on Troy built rototiller ads, and I used to just love the experience of plunging my arm up to the elbow and rototilled ground. And that's all foolishness. Don't rototill it, whatever you do. You don't want to disturb the soil. You don't want to bring up all those weed seeds. So I don't know what. Yeah, so I would not recommend that. You want to just there are various ways to kill vegetation that I talked about, and and then get plants in there, get good native plants in there, and have them take over.
Yeah, there are references. I think if you Prairie Moon Nursery has a guide for how to, and also Prairie Nursery. There's a two local that have really good
On
guides.
how to site prep.
Yeah, for large
Yeah.
areas. And they're very reliable and useful guides. I've actually used them. I've
Great.
actually called Prairie Moon for advice about a certain site that I was doing, and
Uh-huh.
it was
Oh,
great.
they're both operations are run by great people.
Yeah.
So yeah, they really are helpful when you actually call them. Their literature is useful, and their websites and they're the people who answer the phone, they're all great.
Okay. Oh, wait, these questions go on and on. Okay, one more, just a little comment about the redbud. Someone from Southern Indiana says they're very aggressive for her as well down there. Okay, so back to questions. How are we doing on time, Laura?
It's 4:15, and I have actually, there's a question I've been idling on.
Okay.
Don't mind. So this person said, I would like to have a native garden, but I have a septic system. They had a vegetable garden there in the past. I know that is not a good plan. Are there any natives to avoid?
Yeah, but not very many. There are, and I believe that it's Prairie Moon. It's either Prairie Garden, Prairie Nursery, or Prairie Moon Nursery. Actually has a seed mix for over septic systems of things that won't grow too deep. So checking that out and just selecting the plants out of that plant list. Things like a compass plant or a prairie dock that has a great big beefy taproot would probably not be a good idea. But other than that, prairie plants are pretty compatible with your septic systems, because keep in mind that the fibrous roots that are getting down there around your laterals and whatever, those are going to die back every winter. So it just makes it more and more, makes it better and better for getting the water to move through the system. So as far as I know, planting prairie on top of a septic system definitely works. And there are some recipes that people have come up with that I would check out the websites for both those nurseries.
Yeah, I know it's Prairie Nursery for sure. I was just noticing
Okay.
that the other day. Okay. Oh, European bellflower. That must be creeping bellflower, maybe.
Yeah, that was on that list of things.
Yeah. How do you
Um,
recommend removing it? We've only had success with digging it out and sifting the soil for all the rhizomes.
Oh,
Any
yeah.
other suggestions?
Yeah. That, I mean, I believe that's a biennial. So, the Achilles heel with any biennial is that if you can keep them from making flowers, then it gets you ahead of them a little bit. But you need to be persistent. But the green wood chip method does work on those. It's next door in that mess, and it has not peaked up through there at all. In all of last year, I didn't see a sign of it. But again, once you're back gardening that spot, and anytime that you disturb the soil, you're going to bring up seed. Most seed needs sunlight to germinate. So when you bring new seed up to the surface is when you get weeds, and that's a bad weed. So you need to be persistent. A glyphosate herbicide will work on it. but you can dig them out, and you just need to be incredibly persistent. But the green wood chip method, I know for a fact, will work on that. Yeah.
Yeah, and like with other biennials, you're right. If you cut it before it blooms, and then dispose of the, don't chop and drop, cut it and then put it in your in a yard
Yeah.
or something. So
Yeah.
that,
What we've discovered about biennials is that a lot of things that we thought were biennials aren't really. They're more, you know how there are determinate and indeterminate tomatoes.
Mhm.
The determinate ones, once they make fruit, then they stop living. Well, some of the things that we used to think were biennials are actually kind of short-lived, determinate perennials. It takes them until their second year before they'll make a flower. But if they don't successfully make seed, they try again next year. Garlic mustard is like that. So just breaking off the top of the garlic mustard doesn't work. You have to get it out of the ground. And I'm not sure what the case is with bellflowers, but keep that in mind, that simply preventing it from blooming might, or making seed might not be enough. It might try to come back again next year.
yeah, I've also in my own yard, I've found that the more good native plants I've put in, the more the bellflower doesn't really have room to invade. I've got
Uh-huh.
a little bit of it there, and I pull it, I cut it, and again, it's just a question of knocking it back rather than trying to eradicate. In my situation, it might be different in someone else's, but
Right. And because the new plants are coming up from seed, if there's no place where sunlight is getting to the soil, because you've used these methods for a while of covering the ground with plants, then you're going to eventually wear out the population. But you always have to be diligent. You're always going to have to be on the lookout for it.
yeah, that's interesting what you say about the garlic mustard. I'll have to read up on that.
Yeah.
Didn't know that.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's a fancy term for that life cycle. It's not determinate perennial. That's what I came up with. There is a term to explain that, but I forgot what it was.
Good. All right. Okay, we have a question about powdery mildew, a big
Yeah.
problem in our yard. I'm not sure why. I've had to pull out Monarda, asters, a few other things that really had it bad. Any advice?
The trick to powdery mildew is ventilation. Not having too much. You need space between your plants so that the air, for air circulation. The most important thing about powdery mildew is that it really doesn't hurt anything except your feelings. It's not nice to look at. But it isn't hurting the plants. You're going to have more of it in wet years than you are in dry years. Some plants are more resistant to it than other plants, but if you have it, it's not going anywhere. But it's also not really going to hurt anything.
Okay. Next question. I have a sawmill and was wondering if spreading the sawdust on, or I guess around the wildflowers would be a good idea.
Use plants. For a new planting, if you've got aged sawdust and you have a new planting, putting a little bit of sawdust down there as a mulch, I wouldn't put more than an inch on a new planting, just for something for the first couple of years. But there isn't a single plant we work with that evolved in a bed of sawdust. It's just not the proper environment for them. So the much better thing to cover the ground with than sawdust is plants, and you want that to be your objective.
Okay, so I'm going to take just a couple more, and I think then we should probably wind it up.
Yeah.
So here's what common backyard plants, non-natives, do you recommend to absolutely avoid?
Barberry, burning bush. What are all those thugs? Yeah, lamium. You know that. Yeah, lamium for sure. You know, definitely anything in that list that I showed. And if people like Adrian mentioned before, this presentation is going to be posted on both the West Cook Wild Ones YouTube channel and on my YouTube channel, Kenshort. And, you know, so you can go back and look at that list, anything on that list. Most of those plants that I listed there were not weeds. Those are landscape plants that definitely should, you know, the bellflower, the, you know, Pachysandra, purple leaf winter creeper. Oh, that stuff in the southern Indiana and down around there. Where I lived in southeast Kansas, purple leaf winter creeper was the understory in most of the riparian woodlands. It was just terrible how it's taken off.
Yeah, we have a lot over here too.
You know, just if it's not native, it's probably a bad idea. There are some sterile exotic plants that I use that are decent to have, but there are very few. You know, irises aren't going to cause a problem. Daylilies will. And so, yeah, the list goes on, and right now my brain isn't coming up with a whole bunch of them, but that list that I presented in earlier will show it.
Okay.
Someone asked, what are your thoughts on butterfly bush, Ken?
Good point.
Butterfly bush, yeah, it's a short-lived plant. In warmer places than this, it is invasive. You know, in Georgia, definitely don't plant butterfly bush. Up around here, it's not going to live more than 2 or 3 years anyway. You keep your eye out. It's not the worst thing in the world here in Northern Illinois, but better to use native plants. It's just, you know, I used to grow it at the park where I was in southeast Kansas because I didn't know any better, and it didn't attract as many butterflies as many of the other things that I planted nearby it. I was kind of surprised. There's some beautiful ones.
It's sort of like Coke for butterflies. Really. Oh yeah, someone's mentioning privet. Definitely don't plant.
Oh,
just
yeah, don't
plant privet.
Don't plant privet.
Someone says you can get diamond hose on Amazon for $44.95.
Okay, make sure. I'm not sure you can get the DeWitt diamond hoe. So make sure that you are getting the DeWitt, because I've used different ones and those are just so much better. The steel is really good quality. In the Chicago area, Chalet in Winnetka has them for a very reasonable price. Up at Northwind Perennials and up near Burlington, Wisconsin, they sell them there. You can buy them retail a few places. Amazon, last time I looked, did not have the DeWitt diamond hose, but maybe they do now.
Okay, so we really have to wind it up now. I just want to say we've got some questions about buckthorn and winter creeper, and I'm getting this idea that maybe we should do a presentation just on weeds. What do you think? Maybe
the Weed Assassin's Guide to Gardening. I've done that before. Yeah, that's a possibility in the future, for sure.
I've dealt with I deal with buckthorn in the woods frequently.
Yeah.
Someone says yes with 2 exclamation points.
Oh,
I like that idea.
Okay. All right,
Yeah.
so that's an idea. We can put.
I have my own list of most hated, so I guess we all do.
Yeah, I think so. Someone says Talamy has a video on invasives, so that's good to know.
Good.
But I think we should definitely do that. Okay. Oh, and someone asked, could you please show your slide of the of your
The bookshelf slide.
The bookshelf slide.
And I want to, while he's bringing,
I probably can.
I just want everyone to
Okay,
just thank you everyone for coming.
there's the, are you seeing that, the bookshelf slide?
Yes.
Mhm.
Great.
Yep.
Yeah, this is by no means an exhaustive list. And Truth in Advertising, the climate-wise and energy-wise landscape books. Sue Reed is my cousin, so this is a little bit of nepotism, but these are good. You know, the climate-wise landscaping, the preface was written by Doug Tallamy. It's a good book. They're very comprehensive, and you know, if you know nothing, you can read these books and learn good stuff. And if you know a lot, you can read these books and learn good stuff. They're good. Different reasons for liking these different books. Roy Diblick's books are not specifically about natives; they're about perennials. But his ideas on plant combinations and his ideas on just the relationship between the plants and between you and the place and you and the plants and the plants and the place. And it's Roy writes about relationships. Years ago, he gave me a thumb drive with all the pictures that he uses in all his presentations, and the file name for all those pictures was community development. That's his approach.
Right. Yeah, that's the Aldo Leopold land ethic right there. We all have to be responsible members of the land community, of the ecological community.
Yeah. There's no Aldo Leopold here, but
he was sort of my one of my gateways into this world.
uh-huh.
All righty. Well,
All
I guess
right.
we'll wind up now. We did put everyone is going to be getting an email with slides with useful links. So look for that in your email box, and don't forget to check out Ken's YouTube channel. We've got a YouTube channel where I'll be posting this talk in the next couple of days. Ken or Laura, anything else?
We'll send the link to this. Even though it will be posted on YouTube, we'll send out the link just to make it easy for you, along with the set of slides, which are Westcook Wild Ones links, excuse me. And thank you all for coming. And Ken, especially the ending of your talk was I was just enraptured.
Oh, good. That that was the intention. So good. Yeah, the personal, and that's Roy. That's what Roy's done to me, is really, wrapped it in there, the importance of that relationship. Jennifer Jewell, if anybody listens to podcasts, Cultivating Place, it is Jennifer Jewell, and yeah, it's Cultivating Place, and that's what the focus of her podcast. She's excellent. She wrote last year. She published a book on with the earth in her hands. 50 women important in horticulture. That's not the name, but it's something like that. Yeah, Jennifer Jewell talks a lot about that personal connection, and it's you got to have it. It's what makes things work just so much better. And when we don't have it is when we end up with the kind of mess we got, and we got to fix that.
All righty. Well, I guess we're done.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just going to type in the podcast info. Ken, you said it was Cultivating Place by Jennifer Jewell.
Yes. Yeah, it's an NPR podcast.
Here it is. The Earth in Her Hands.
Yeah, The Earth in Her Hands.
75 extraordinary.
Yeah, 75 extraordinary women working in the world of plants.
Nice.
And our friend, who has spoken to your group, Claudia West. She's in there. It's alphabetical, so she's towards the end. But yeah, a lot of good people doing a lot of good work. And Jennifer's sleuthing them out. And she had my wife Christine Nye on her show one time, talking about the migratory bird garden at the Shed Aquarium.
Excellent. Well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you
Ken,
guys. Yeah, thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate the